can do. Now do stop frowning, Livia dear, for I'm delighted to tell you we've come for the express purpose of offering a little treat." "I'm all ears, ma'am," replied Livia with what had to be obvious sarcasm, but Lady Glanville only said, with her Arctic smile, "We are hosting a ball next week. It shall be a kind of debut for Cecily. In addition, Mr. Gabriel Penhallow and his grandmother, Mrs. Penhallow, come to visit us," Cecily said breathlessly. "The Penhallows, of Sermont Hall. We met Mrs. Penhallow in Bath a few months ago. She wrote us a letter. He's going to—" "My dear Cecily, pray refrain from interrupting. It is most unbecoming," said her ladyship. "As you know, Bella, earlier in the summer I insisted that Lord Glanville go to Bath in order to drink from the waters. His gout, unfortunately, had been paining him a great deal, the nobleman's affliction, and I thought Cecily might benefit from mixing in a wider society, for it is sadly limited in this neighbourhood. There are, alas, so few families of our calibre. As both the daughter of an earl and as a viscountess, I fear I cannot but be aware of how limited our acquaintance must necessarily be. Yet one must, in these rackety modern times, sometimes unbend, and here we are." Too kind," Aunt Bella murmured, evidently with real, if muzzy, gratitude. She took a sip from the delicate crystal glass on the little table at her elbow. In it was her cordial, which, Livia knew, was heavily laced with laudanum. Lady Glanville nodded serenely, and the peacock feathers in her elaborate silk turban waved gently, as if in agreement. "While in Bath, we had occasion to observe Mrs. Penhallow in the pump-room. I distinctly noticed her looking at Cecily, but naturally would not have dreamed of encroaching upon her. An earl's daughter is as nothing compared to her. The Penhallows came to England with the Conqueror, you know, and it's said that the Conqueror bowed to them. Thus imagine our gratification when she sent the Master of Ceremonies to us, so that he could escort us to her and perform the introduction." "My knees were positively shaking," Cecily put in, "but I curtsied quite well, didn't I, Mamma?" "Creditably so. I had no occasion to blush. I must plume myself on my foresight in having you practice curtsying before we left for Bath. An hour a day works wonders. But I digress. Mrs. Penhallow and I spoke for some 15 minutes, and at the risk of seeming boastful, I must say that she was condescension itself. We discussed the weather and the dreadful state of the roads. I happened to mention Lord Glanville's gout, and she recommended a treatment which—" Her ladyship went on to recount further details of her conversation with the redoubtable Mrs. Penhallow, a personage of whom Livia knew nothing and cared less. Bored, she stopped listening, and instead she looked at the rapt, lovely face of Cecily as she hung on her mother's every word. Not for the first time, Livia thought how uncannily Cecily resembled the china shepherdesses Aunt Bella had once collected. It was that shining hair of hers, the colour of new straw, those cornflower blue eyes, that pale, creamy skin. Today she wore an exquisite long-sleeved gown of the finest, whitest cambric, which set off her willowy figure to perfection. From underneath its lacy appliqued hem peeped dainty kid slippers with pretty little pink rosettes. Livia resisted the urge to glare at her own slippers, very old, very run down. Instead, she looked over at Aunt Bella. Her slippers weren't much better, who kept her sleepy gaze fixed on Lady Glanville as she droned on, occasionally murmuring, "Indeed," and "How delightful." She lay half-reclining on her sofa, draped in innumerable shawls, some of which puddled forgotten on the floor. Aunt Bella suffered from an extensive variety of ailments, none of which she ever openly discussed, all of which she treated with her cordial, which she described nebulously as a superior medicinal. She spent a good deal of her time dozing in this room, with only a cage of